Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Going well. How are you? And it looks like you're in a bunker.
Well, I'm in my bat cave, as they call it. I've got a facility down here at the Napa Airport that we run our operation out of.
Uh-huh.
Myself and my business partner, Chris, and we are a essential business according to the state of California because we do provide housing.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, so I've got we can jump right into it, but folks probably know I have I manage Airbnbs. I own Airbnbs. We manage them for other people, et cetera. So we have a management business that does that. And we had just an unbelievable amount of cancellations. But one of the things that we're doing is we moved to a 7 and 30 day rental model. So we do 7 day blocks, and we're getting a bunch of healthcare workers coming into Napa and people providing like disaster relief services that are leasing up our properties.
Right.
So it's an interesting place to be because we're currently running about, I don't know, what would you say, Chris? Chris is behind the screen here, but we're like 65, 70% below market, right? For normal rates.
Right.
Yeah. So we're running about 65, maybe 70% below normal rates, which is just we're running
Well,
cash flow.
sure. Yeah. Let's take a step back for a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think a lot of people listening will know who you are, know that we, know we're bros or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think a lot of people will be new. So I'll intro you and you tell me if this is right.
Sure.
You've done real estate investment most of your adult life. You're in your 40s now. You had an Airbnb business that was at 101% occupancy, super high rents, and it was just killing it. And Corona hit. What happened then?
Yeah, so I do a lot of real estate stuff, okay? But one of the businesses that I own is a Airbnb business. I'm blessed in that I live not just in California, but I live in Napa Valley, which is just absolutely a gorgeous, beautiful market. We're about 35 miles outside of the city of San Francisco, northeastern corner of the San Francisco Bay Area, and we are one of the 9 Bay Area counties. So our occupancy rates here are insane. They're artificially insane because Napa County is very diligent on policing illegal vacation rentals. You got to have a permit. You got to collect the transient occupancy tax or hotel tax, and then you turn that into the county. If you're not doing that, they shut you down quick. Napa Valley has the distinction of being the only county that I'm aware of in the United States that's ever arrested and imprisoned a host of an illegal vacation rental. So with that said, rates are very, very high here because you only have 41 licensed units.
Right.
And we do typically run about 101 to 103% occupancy on all of our units. And we do that. People say, well, how is that even possible? Because people cancel, they pay a cancellation fee, and then we reload those same nights. So we actually, a few months ago, I think it was in, what was that, Chris? October, November, we did 107, 108% occupancy at one of our properties. So we had a couple of dates that it had booked, canceled, booked, then canceled again, and then rebooked. And so we literally, that's how busy our properties are here. They're very, very expensive properties. They're very difficult to buy because the permit is attached to the deed. So I just want to kind of give that background because, you're dealing with a business that is very, very, very profitable, and was just running like gangbusters. We were hiring, cleaning staff. We bought, 3 vans, like Ford Transit vans recently, just really scaling into this business hardcore. And then COVID-19 hit. And we have seen over the past 10 days, well over $100,000 in cancellations, and continue to see about $4,000 to $5,000 a day in cancellations. I think this morning we were a little over $7,000 in cancellations just this morning.
Yeah, great. And I think that's what I want to focus on is the calamity, maybe not calamity, but this is a big deal. This is a huge thing.
Yeah, and
what happens?
there's a lot of people out there saying, hey, you can't be talking about this stuff, but I think it's really important for people to understand, what like small entrepreneurs like myself and guys a lot smaller than me even that own like, they own a pizza joint, in downtown New York or, in Fresno, California or something. These people are not multimillionaires and you can't withstand this long prolonged issue. And so I think it's really important to get out there and talk about what's happening so that, officials understand that it's not just, you can't just go out and shut all these businesses down and then not provide help to them.
Great. So let's start there. Actually, I think that's a good beginning point because I'm witnessing now what I witnessed in 2008, 2009, which is you do the right things. You make your money. You invest in a property. You don't over leverage yourself. You don't go into credit card debt. You're not popping bottles at the club. You're just really doing the right thing and everything's going great. And then overnight, boom. I've been walking around retails 60% down overnight.
Oh, I would say 60% is probably generous. I think many of them are way below that. I mean, anecdotally, if you look at like restaurants here in downtown Napa that typically are wickedly busy. I mean, just year round, we just have 4 million tourists or something that come to Napa. You've got restaurants right now that seat 230 people that have no one inside the restaurant. Okay. And not only do they have no one in there, they're trying to do carry out. And now the restaurants in town are discounting their carry out. So one guy came out and said, hey, everything on my menu is 20% off the normal menu price if you pick it up at the curb. Well, a guy 3 doors down just did an email blast. Mine is 30% below menu cost. So now you've got guys that are doing, 10, 15% of the business. And now they're discounting that 10 or 15% of the business. So,
right. They're getting that. That's what I'm trying to explain to people who don't understand or who've never run a business is that like, that's my job. My job is people are being morons and they don't get it. And the people who are morons include people in Congress who read me and listen to me, but they've never run a business. And they don't understand the math of a business. I was trying to think of an easy way to put it, and you can interject as you see fit. But just to use round numbers, I would tell people, imagine you run a business that does 12 million a year in revenue. Your margins are 10%, your net margins. So you're doing 1.2 million a year. You're rich, right? So to speak. Okay. But that means it costs you $1 million a month to run it. So even if you've been saving your money and not spending it, you can't run your business for what? Maybe 2-3 months at the most before it shuts down. And this is everywhere. Every business is running on those numbers.
Right. And people say, oh, well, you know what? You can just not, order materials or you can just not, let's take a restaurant that's doing 12 million a year. Okay. And there are a lot of restaurants out there, especially in the Bay Area, that do big numbers. Okay. And I think restaurants are, emblematic of everything out there. So I like using them because everybody goes in them. So it's a great example. But yeah, you can lay off your staff. Okay. But you still got to buy some food because you're going to do your carryout business. Now, what happens with your utilities? Are those discounted? Is your insurance discounted? What about your lease? What about your mortgage payment if you own your building? I mean, all these things are fixed costs. People don't realize that those are fixed. You have to pay that every month. Whether you close down and lay your employees off, you still have an enormous debt load every month with your facility, your upkeep of your facility, your insurance, your taxes, it just goes on and on and on and on. And this is a really, really, really bad situation for these small entrepreneurs. And I think it's really important that people understand that we talk about 2008 and 2009. Okay, yeah, well, that was totally different. And let me tell you why. Totally different situation than this. Because in 2008 and 2009, it was a top-down calamity, okay? Meaning that people like Goldman Sachs, people like Bear Stearns, people like AIG Insurance, these huge multinational billion-dollar corporations were facing calamity, okay? But they have access to the capital market. Does Mike Cernovich, book business, publishing business, do you have access to the Fed funds rate to go borrow, $800,000 to keep your publishing business afloat?
Right.
You don't.
Right.
Okay. And that's what people don't understand, is that this isn't a top down problem. This is a bottom up problem. Okay. So you've got the small pizza guy, you've got the guy that, the woman that owns a clothing shop, in a little downtown Main Street, the person that owns the local coffee shop. What happens to these people? Okay, how do they pay rent? And then if they're a hustler, let's say they've been a hustler for the past 2 years and their coffee shop's doing freaking great, and so now they've gone out and they've opened up 2, 3, 4, 5 coffee shops, okay? Because they've got a great concept that's better than Starbucks, which in my opinion would not be very hard. And but the thing is, we've been in a raging bull market, okay? So what happens when you're in a raging bull market? Well, you leverage in, right? So you take profits from one establishment, and then you parlay those profits into opening up, another coffee shop, right? And then another coffee shop. But all of a sudden, and you're growing and you're doing great and you're employing, 50, 60, 70 people, and you're doing a great service for the community and great service for your employees and all these things. And you've got, landlords out there that, have granted you leases, and then all of a sudden everything stops. Well, that guy has been a very responsible entrepreneur. Okay. And people say, oh, well, but no, he's been a responsible entrepreneur. It's a bull market. This is a black swan event. Okay. No one saw this coming. No one saw this coming. And so how do you help that guy? How does the government step in and help that guy? How does that guy, make rent? I know, I get it. Okay. He can not order as much coffee and he can lay off some employees. But how does he pay his lease? How does he pay his utilities? How does he pay his insurance? How does he pay, the equity money, the operating capital that he borrowed out of his business? Say he took a $200,000 loan, to leverage in and continue to build his business. How do these people survive?
I don't know how do they? That's the question, right?
What
do you do?
Right. And you send out what, $1,000 check to everybody? I mean, that's the most anemic response. I just don't, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah. I've had a lot of people say, like, I'm quote unquote losing it or whatever. And which is funny because Nestor and I have joked about that. And you've been with me. You guys have actually been with me while I'm hanging out, and people would be like, oh my God, Cernovich is like melting down. Meanwhile, I'm smoking a cigar. But like, I am fucking pissed. Like, I'm really pissed at $1,000 based on your 2018 income, but it phases out over $88,000. This is shit. You hear this and you just think, you're a moron. Where did you get this from? Who would even draft this proposal? And it doesn't even begin to cover what the calamity that we're facing. $1,000, but if you make over 88,000, you get nothing. 1,000 is not even enough for the people making under $88,000. And it doesn't do anything for the small business owners at all. $1,000, what are you going to cover 1/4 of your rent payment? The coffee shop I go to, and this is not like a luxurious shop, it's a small business. His rent's $3,000 a month.
Right.
And that isn't a Starbucks. That's just an independent small shop.
Let's take that $3,000, layer on your insurance. Okay. So that's probably another, I don't know, $500 a month.
Right.
Okay. Layer on your utilities and, some other, whatever you got, CAM charges, et cetera. Okay. So we're at another $500. There's $4,000. Right. And then you layer on another $1,000 of whatever, miscellaneous contingent charges that it costs just to have that shop sit there. Right. You're at $5,000 a month. Multiply that by 5 stores.
Right. Yeah. And coffee shops this is a thing I think a lot of people too don't get until they've run a business. People don't make as much as you think they're making, right? They've accumulated wealth over 30 years. So they're like, oh, that guy's got the Corvette or the Ferrari or the whatever. Well, but he's 50 and he's been in business since he was 20. Right. And he's worth like a couple million.
Well, you and I both have a buddy of ours, Ralph Napolitano, right? That owns a restaurant in New York City. Okay. Would that his great grandpa bought that restaurant in the 1918. Okay. And it's been
Right.
passed down to the next son and the next son and the next person, right? They own the building. They own the building and the land. Would Ralph, and it'd be great to ask him this, but I'm sure he would say absolutely not. If Ralph had to go out and lease that building today at current market rates or market rates that were 2 months ago, would he make any money?
Right.
Of course not. Yeah, I mean, there's no way he'd be in the hole every month, $8,000 or something.
Right.
And so people don't understand that. Oh, well, they're business owners. Well, yeah, because it's been a family enterprise for X number of years, or they've lived a Spartan lifestyle for 2 decades, and they happen to own some real estate that they operate a business out of that's 100% paid for, and most of that profit comes out of that investment that was made years ago.
Right.
I mean, yeah, if you go out and lease space and you're running like a cigar shop or a coffee shop or a clothing store, you're lucky if you're making 6, 7, 8% profit after you pay everything.
Yeah. There was a guy at the coffee shop. He has 14 Blaze pizzas. And the reason you have to franchise so many is because it's not like you're making $1 million on each store.
Right.
That's what
they
people
make
don't.
40, 50, 60 grand on each one after everything.
Yeah, Subway. There's a great YouTube channel where they talk about all these. Subway, you do 28 to 40,000 per Subway store. That's why people own 20 of them. Well, great. So you own 20 of them, and now overnight crashed like that overnight. And then what do you? You're going to give that guy $1,000? You wouldn't even give him $1,000 because he made over 88,000. Right. So he made over 88,000. So that guy gets nothing. So then all the Subway workers lose their jobs. They all own rent. They have landlords. Most landlords, contrary to popular belief, do not look for ways. They're not like slumlords. This is not the way it's done for the most part. Well, you can't pay your rent. The landlord can't pay his mortgage. What happens now? Again, we don't know. We've never seen anything like this. We've never seen Vegas shut down, right?
The pictures that I'm seeing from people taking, photos and video on the Strip, like last night, is just unbelievable. I mean, you and I have been to Vegas a few times together. It even on like a Tuesday afternoon in the middle of the winter time, it's busy you just can't even imagine how busy it is if you've never been. But I mean, there's just people everywhere on both sides of the street, and 8 people deep or 15 people deep. It's just unbelievable. And to see these photos with nothing happening there. Now, and again, in that situation, you're talking about massive corporations like MGM and Wynn and, the Sands Corporation, et cetera, that have access to, capital markets where they can borrow and maybe weather a storm for a little while. But what about the guy that owns, like the lollipop store in the middle of, MGM Grand?
Right.
The guy that sells donuts, on your way out to get the Uber. I mean, what about those guys? And those are the people that are really, truly suffering here. And I'm not hearing much in the way of government assistance for those people or a government bailout for those people other than, hey, apply for an SBA loan.
Yeah. What are you going to do with the loan? How are you going to pay it back without cash flow coming in? The whole process, this is something two people learn as you live in the game more, is most members of Congress are just, they're absolute idiots. They are complete and total morons. They don't know anything. They've never had any real success in life. And that's the kind of person, thankfully there are people who are truly selfless and want to serve. But there's a reason that if you were proposing a good form of government, you would make people who don't want to be in government be in government because they don't get it. We're going to give people, it's not, it's the kind of thing that where if somebody tells you what, you say, okay, you can't even be in the room. So let's say we're all brainstorming, what do you think should be done? What should government do? And somebody goes, $1,000 if you made under 88,000 in 2018. If you made over that, you get nothing. You'd be like, okay, you got to leave. You need to get out of here. That's Congress. We're stuck with them, right? But if we were brainstorming, we'd just be like, all right, kid, you can go grab our coffee. And I just
and then let's segue into real estate a little bit. So I see that Bank of America is offering a 90-day forbearance. Okay. And so I'm seeing people like on Facebook and Twitter and stuff, really touting this. Oh, they're such great people. Listen, folks, forbearance is not what you think it is. Okay. The only way that this whole thing's going to work is if you do a recast of the loan. A forbearance means that you don't have to, let's say that Mike has a mortgage on his house and it's $5,000 a month. and he doesn't pay he says, okay, hey, Bank of America, I've got a loan with you. I'll take you up on the forbearance. Okay, great. So you don't pay your $5,000 a month for 90 days. What happens on the fourth payment?
Right.
You owe 20 grand.
Right.
Forbearance it doesn't push the loan out. It pushes the payment out without interest and without penalties for 3 months. But then on the fourth payment, you got to pay 20 grand.
Yeah, that's a good point. It only works and it's still not a great thing, but the only way it works, and it's still painful, but it would still work, is you would just recapitalize that unpaid interest into the principal. So you would say, okay, if your mortgage is $1,000 a month and $500 that's interest, then you're going to have to put that $500 every month. It's going to go back into the balance of the mortgage. And then
listen, the banks already know how to. Here's the thing that pisses me off. The banks already know how to do this shit.
Right. There's an amortization table, right?
Yeah. Yes. Well, they did this back in 2005. Countrywide Mortgage made a killing doing this. They're called negative AM mortgages. So immediately they should make every single commercial and residential loan a negative AM mortgage.
Tweet that out. I'll retweet it. That'll do well. Tweet that out. Yeah. I haven't heard anybody say that.
Okay. So listen, you do that right now, and you say you have an elective payment, because listen, I know this for a fact, that back in 2004 and 5, Countrywide Mortgage had option payments. You could get a loan for 700 grand, and if you wanted to, you could only pay $800. And if you felt like it, you could pay 1,800. If you felt like it, you could pay 2,800. And the difference would just get negative AM. It would get added to the balance of your loan. So your loan balance would grow. The banks already know how to do this shit. And this should just be, in my opinion, this should be a federal mandate. If you're going to force people to stay at home and force them to be out of business, then you better make these negative AM mortgages for commercial and residential. You better make these nationwide forced situation.
The Fed could do that. Good. So yeah, the Fed could do that overnight. So I like that you use that lingo. We want to tweet that out. And for people who don't know the lingo, when you pay and the reason Mike is ranting, because he should, the bank, there's literally a chart. So if you go, it's called an amortization table. So you can just see, okay, every month, if you pay $1,000, here goes to principal, here goes to interest. So all the banks have to do is say, oh, okay, the 3 months that you can't pay your mortgage, we're just going to take that interest, roll it into the balance of the mortgage. And then when you're back on your feet, your mortgage payment will go up, but it'll go up maybe 10%. It won't go up 100% or 300%. It won't be what's called the balloon payment, which is, okay, we gave you a 3-month forbearance and now you owe a massively much bigger payment. It would be like, no, your payment's going to go up.
Every bank knows how to do this because they've already done it.
Right.
Okay. They did this 12, 13 years ago to people out there who lied on their mortgages, and they knew they were lying, and they told people, oh, hey, you work at Target? You're a checker at Target? You made 112 grand last year, right? Okay, yeah, so you can get this negative AM loan and buy that $600,000 2-bedroom, 1-bath here in California, and you only got to make, $825 a month payment. Okay? Right. This is available in the government. If you mandate that people stay at home and you mandate that businesses can't be open, then you have to mandate that every single mortgage, commercial, residential, private, public, doesn't fucking matter. Every mortgage, until this thing passes, should be a negative AM option payment. So, hey, if a guy like me can, maybe my mortgages are, let's just say that mortgages on your business, your pizza restaurant, are $10,000 a month. Maybe you got a little bit of savings and you can pay $1,500. Then pay the $1,500 to the bank. Okay.
Sure. And some people pay ahead. And just to interrupt you briefly, there's a lot of people that pay ahead on their mortgage anyway. People who listen to Dave Ramsey, sure, they pay them more. So that's what I mean. We're not proposing like rocket science, calculus, advanced derivatives kind of thing. It's like the banks have a freaking table. They could just say, okay, we're just going to work the interest back in the principal. Then and then you just literally, if you look at a table, it'll just push forward all of the payments due, readjusting the balance by adding it. You're right. It's genius. It's so simple. Why isn't anybody talking about this?
And this could happen. You just mandate this nationwide, that all lenders, doesn't matter if you're commercial, residential, public, private, you got this kind of backing on the loan. You hear this thing like, Trump said that, HUD is not going to, do any foreclosures until June 1st or whatever the date was. It's just dumbest freaking thing I've ever heard. How in the heck? I mean, who has a HUD loan?
Right.
I mean, seriously, who has a HUD? I mean, nobody.
Right.
I mean, nobody. You can jump on the HUD website, go to HUD store, like I think it's hudstore.org or .com, and you can look at how many houses they have for sale. Like in the entire state of California, it's like 12. Okay, it's just stupid. You have to do this for every loan, commercial, residential, doesn't matter. You have to force them to take a negative amortization option-only payment. So whatever you can send in, you send in. Okay. And then maybe we look at this again on July 1st and say, hey, the storm's passed and, things are okay now. And we're going to go back to the regular amortization schedule. Okay. But I think they should just do it. Just do a 1-year deal, 1 year, every mortgage on every piece of real property in the United States has to forcibly move to a negative option only payment.
We have to push this. This has to be done because I was thinking about that the other day where I'm reading this and I didn't have the terminology that you're calling it, but I said, all you have to do is move the mortgage into the principal.
Right.
It's called capitalizing interest. It's in good times. It's still, yeah.
People don't realize that we're already, okay. You're never going to hear this from a realtor. Okay. Because they would never say
it's always a good time to buy, Mike. Oh, the market's crashing. Oh, good time to buy. You're going to fire sales. Yeah.
Here's the thing. The real estate market is in a complete state of chaos. Prices are already coming down and it's going to get really, really, really bad unless they do what I just said. That's the only way that you're going to be able to prop up the real estate market right now is if you do what I just said. I don't know, and I've been in this decades. I don't know you can't put money on it. There's just not, there's just no way to throw a check here and there into this guy and that guy. And what they should do is they have to do what we laid out before, or the real estate market is going to collapse. There's just no way. You can't have, oh, hey, by the way, Gavin Newsom says, you don't have to pay your rent. You can just, nobody's going to get kicked out of their house. Oh, great. Okay. So, but then all the banks on the other side of this transaction are going to start, coming after all these landlords that can't make their payments. It has to be across the board in order to save the market. Otherwise, we're going to be in a calamity like we were in 2009.
No, I mean, worse. I mean, it's worse because in 2009, people still had jobs. It might not have been a good job, but people weren't losing their jobs like they were losing their houses. So what happened in 2008, 2009, even though it was a bad recession, unemployment, people are rewriting the history of that. So what happened to most people is that you had a job making, say, 60 to 80 grand, but you bought $1 million house because they were called ninja loans, no income verification loans. Right. And you bought $1 million home and you only had to pay a $500 a month mortgage payment because of the shenanigans we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
And you just couldn't buy your house anymore. So that was it, but you still had your job. You didn't lose your job at, T-Mobile or, wherever you were working.
Right.
Now it's the opposite. Most people have, if you own a home, you had to buy equity. You probably had to put 20% down unless it's, a special category loan. And you've been making your payments. So you have equity in your house, but you're going to watch your house go. You showed me that a house in Napa went down, 25%, I believe, overnight.
Yes. So yeah, there was a fourplex that was on the market here in Napa, multifamily property. People that don't know what that is, it's like a small apartment building. And the property was listed, I think it was $2.3 million, and they did a $400,000 price reduction yesterday. One price reduction, $400,000. Okay. And I will tell you that I'm connected with a ton of investors, a ton of real estate investors, talk to them daily, phone, emails, whatever. I'm telling you, they are worried, very worried. Okay. Because most of these guys, you own a 10-plex, okay, and you own maybe 2 of them, one in Fresno and one in Modesto or something. What do you do if 14 of those 20 people decide not to pay rent? How long do you think a small landlord that's, taken on debt to have this building, and then they still have to maintain the common areas, they still have to maintain the insurance, they still have to maintain the roof and the air conditioners, and on and on and on. How long can this guy go with tenants not paying rent? It's just, in the way that you, again, the way you can fix this is a negative AM deal. You could even make it where if the landlord doesn't offer a negative AM rent option to the tenant, then they can't do the negative AM on the loan.
That's great. Beautiful.
You know, so
Beautiful.
so that way it helps everybody out. But the way that we're doing this now is just, it's totally wrong. And Trump is the ultimate real estate guy. I mean, he's a real estate guy. So somehow, some way, I hope that he gets the message that this is how we can fix it. And he knows it, and I know he's got a lot of other shit going on. I get it. But I heard yesterday on CNBC that the real estate market is tied to $17 trillion in economic activity in the United States. You have to shore up real estate because real estate is the underpinning to everything else. It's the underpinning to the pizza guy. It's the underpinning to the restaurant. It's the underpinning to the people, everybody that lives somewhere, unless they live under a bridge. I mean, real estate is the underpinning to our society. You have to fix it. Have to fix it.
Well, the wages, everything else, it's a mess. It's systemic. It's a complete and total disaster. And the bailout packages I'm seeing is what you would expect. Big check to the airlines, a big check to banks, a big check to other people, even though the Fed, with the stroke of a pen, could do what we just talked about. So please tweet that out so we can tweet it. And then when we edit this podcast, we'll make sure we chunk like 3 minutes explaining that out, because once people hear it, and Trump will, I mean, everything I tweet, Trump gets if it's just reality.
Yeah.
And we definitely have to get that message up for sure.
Yeah, it's really important. And like you said, you said just a minute ago, is people don't realize that this is a bottom up issue. Okay. So you've got these people, this isn't like 2008 and 9 where you have, the guy at Bear Stearns or, the huge corporation or whatever it is that's, got systemic failure in the banking system or whatever. This is more serious because it's the everyday man, it's the everyday woman that are facing these calamities. Okay. Yes, there's a few industries that, are doing really well. I guess if you own a Costco, or Costco's probably doing great, and the toilet paper guy is doing fantastic, and, the Purell company is doing great. But we're facing an issue that's really, really, really bad. And by the way, my business is still going. So you see people walking in and out behind me. We're still working here and we're still doing stuff. It's just on a very skeleton crew. But yeah, my team is still going, and we're trying to keep as many people employed as we possibly can. And we need that help from the government to do what I talked about with this reverse AM. It has to happen.